Yo, what's good? So here's some quick lore about me. In high school, I played varsity basketball, and growing up, basketball was one of my favorite sports. Now, before you ask, no, I wasn't like Matt B. Great, aka White Randy, dropping 25 points a game in high school. I was more known for riding the wood. Whoa, pause, that sounds crazy. Remember to delete that. Anyway, I bring this all up because in this video today, we're going to be taking a look at blue blood basketball schools whose football teams went off and set the college football world on fire. And also, how would y'all feel if I made some videos like I do now, but about basketball teams and some of the greatest March Madness runs of all time? Let me know down below in the comments. Damn, this intro is getting long, so be sure to like and sub if you enjoy the content. These videos take a while to make, but anyway, let's jump right in. Alright, so the first team I'm going to be taking a look at in this video, it has to be the 2013 Duke Blue Devils. And I'll give you two quick reasons why. First off, shout out to Tio Mendeo, I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, I made a promise to him that if he commented for me to cover Duke 7 days in a row, I would do it. And you know what? He did it, so here we are. Also, I do have to clarify. He did want me to take a look at the 2022 squad specifically, but I figured since the 2013 team made it to Duke's only ACC championship game in program history up to this point, it'd make for a better video. And reason number two, when comparing Duke's basketball program to their football program, it's night and day. As the basketball side has been one of the most recognizable brands in sports, so they have won 5 national championships, have had countless top picks, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Now compare that to the football team, who has lost more games than they have won, and if I'm being honest, haven't been relevant since when the Chicago Cardinals were winning NFL championships. Even though I will admit recently they've been playing great ball. I say all this to say this 2013 Duke Blue Devils football team would flip the script, having one of their best seasons in program history. And what makes this season even crazier is this squad was predicted by the ACC media to finish dead last in the ACC Coastal Division. Okay, short little intro out of the way, let's take a look at some of the key figures a part of this 2013 Duke Blue Devils squad. Leading the program in his 6th year up to that point was head coach David Cutcliffe. Blue Devils fans, let me know down below in the comments where you rank him all time for Duke coaches. Skating over to the quarterback position, the man leading the team was Anthony Boone, who would pass for 2,260 yards with 18 total touchdowns. I do have to mention he would be out for a couple of games this season because of a fractured collarbone. Moving over to the running back position, the team lead in rushing was Josh Snead, who would rush for just over 650 yards with 1 touchdown. I have to mention the other quarterback on this team, Brandon Connett, who was more of a rushing threat as he would finish the year with 14 rushing touchdowns. Finally, going to the receiving core, we got Jamison Crowder, who would finish the season with 108 receptions, just over 1,300 yards with 8 touchdowns, just straight up monster stats. So to open the 2013 football season up, Duke would start off 2-0. In their first 2 games, they would easily defeat North Carolina Central 45-0. Their second one, however, wouldn't be as easy, as on the road against Memphis, the score would be tied at 14 with about 11 minutes left to go in the game. However, Duke would score the last 2 touchdowns of the match, coming out on top of the Memphis Tigers 28-14. After those 2 wins, ACC play was beginning, and Duke would have to be playing a couple of these early season games without their starting quarterback, as he would be injured for a couple of games. With that being said, Duke would get smacked around by the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, losing 38-14. The loss was tough, but Duke would have to have a short memory and be ready for their next ACC conference game against the Pittsburgh Panthers. This game would be a banger, and when I say it was a banger, I mean it, as it would total over 110 points.
Handoff Connor, first down, touchdown. As a back, he'll get out into the pattern on 2nd and short. He gets the ball. Nice move by Boyd, gets the first down, tripped up, and into Savage to throw. Over the middle, has Street complete. Street in a foot race, and he's going to get to the end zone. Savage with time again, pass into the end zone, touchdown. They need the 4 for the first down. They got it. They got a touchdown. On 3rd down, Connett throws, intercepted. Intercepted by Gonzalez. He runs into the end zone, touchdown, Pitt.
Duke would fight extremely hard against Pittsburgh, but would ultimately lose 58-55. The backup quarterback for Duke would play a good game, but would also make a lot of mistakes, as while he would total over 400 plus yards with 6 total touchdowns, he would also turn the ball over 4 times. No matter how good you play, if you throw 4 interceptions, it's going to be hard to pull off the win. Oh yeah, and if you were wondering why there wasn't any offensive snaps from Duke in those highlights, it's because there wasn't any version of the highlights I could find like that. Anyway, Duke would bounce back, winning 2 games after taking that tough loss, taking down Troy 38-31. This game was close all game long, as it would be tied 28-28 early into the 3rd quarter, but the Blue Devils would end the game strong, pulling out the win. Their next game against Navy would be much easier, as Duke would win a dominant game 35-7. A lot of that might have been because Duke's starting quarterback was back from injury, and he would ball out, finishing the game with just shy of 300 passing yards with 3 touchdowns. The Blue Devils were now sitting at 4-2 and had somewhat started to turn their season around, as they had won 2 straight games. Duke would keep up the winning streak, extending it to 3, defeating Virginia 35-22. The Blue Devils would start this game off sloppy, as going into the second half, the score would be Virginia 22 to Duke 7. But once the Blue Devils would come out of halftime, they would completely take over the game, scoring 28 unanswered points to win the game on the road against the Cavaliers. 5-2, Duke was about to embark on a tough stretch of ACC play, more specifically a 4-game stretch on the road at 14th ranked Virginia Tech, NC State, a home game versus the 23rd ranked Miami Hurricanes, and to finish off this stretch, a road game versus Wake Forest. This stretch of conference play would be extremely tough, and since Duke had already lost 2 conference games already, if they wanted to have any chance of making it to the ACC championship game, they would have to be perfect through this stretch, which would be nearly impossible. Could this Duke squad pull it off though?
Example of some sloppy first half play, Anthony Boone. Looking down the sideline, overthrows Kendall Fuller there for the IN quarter. Virginia Tech trailing 3-0. Logan Thomas looks into the end zone, intercepted. Great play by Ross Cockrell. They'll drive 1st and goal. Anthony Boone decides the safest thing, keep it himself. 9 yards for the touchdown, 6 yards. Later in the drive, Logan Thomas goes himself, 5-yard going for it. Brandon Connett, the Phantom, shakes off one tackle, spins off another. 1st down, Blue Devils.
Connett's going to throw. He'll take a chance downfield. And it's caught at the 30-yard line. The bounces are good. Here's a handoff. Josh Sneed with some space. Sneed across midfield. Finally tackled. 3 rushing, 1 passing. Connett, his 4th rushing touchdown. Last 3 games. They'll call the play. They get the 1st down and more. It's a touchdown for Shaquille Powell.
Running back and linebacker this year. Boone throwing the fade for McCaffrey. Price keeping all the way inside the 5. Touchdown Wade. Former teammate with the Red Sox of one Babe Ruth. And now the deep ball looking for Crowder, and he's got it inside the 5. Connett keeps it. Connett scores.
Duke would be perfect through this stretch, going 4-0. In their first game of this stretch against the 14th ranked Hokies, both teams would play extremely sloppy, as both quarterbacks for each team would throw 4 interceptions. However, Duke would go up first and never give the lead back. Also, a major shout out to this Duke defense. They would bend all game but never break, as get this, the Hokies would outgain Duke by nearly 200 plus yards and have the ball for almost 20 minutes longer, but the Duke defense would hold on, leading to Duke winning the game 13-10. Their next game against NC State would be much of the same, and although Duke would win 38-10, they would be outgained and turn the ball over 4 times, but the Duke defense would clutch up again, preventing the Wolfpack from reaching the end zone when it counted. Also, sorry for not showing those highlights. No cap while making this video, it was so hard to find some of these 2013 Duke football highlights. Anyway, versus Miami, Duke would be down early 17-7 going into the second half, but once the second half hit, Duke would look like a completely different team, dominating Miami and winning the game 48-30. The Blue Devils were now 8-2 going into the final game of this stretch against Wake Forest. Duke would start off slow, being down 14-0, but would tie the game going into halftime. The second half would go back and forth until Duke would take the lead in the 3rd quarter, and from there the scoring would stop as Duke would come out on top 28-21. Duke was now 9-2 and had finally cracked the top 25 going into their last game of the regular season, a huge rivalry game against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Oh yeah, did I mention if Duke could pull out this win, they would clinch a spot in the ACC championship game?
Williams keeps, and Marquise Williams scores. Looking for Crowder in the... Williams got Ebron, and Williams with the keeper. Touchdown. And after the touchdown and the 2-point conversion, Duke trying to respond. Devon Edwards down the near sideline, and he will take it to the house. Tar Heels bringing 3. Boone gonna step up into the end zone. Crowder gets a foot down. Touchdown. Looking for the end zone. Got his man. Touchdown, Carolina. Quinshon. Caught at the 45 and across midfield. 1st down, and just sneaks it inside. Williams hit as he throws, and it's intercepted. Intercepted by Devon Edwards. And the Duke Blue Devils.
Duke would come out on top of their rivals North Carolina 27-25 in an extremely entertaining game that would see both teams swapping the lead, as Duke would lead 24-15 at one point in the third quarter, but the Tar Heels would storm back, taking the lead 25-24 with about 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Duke would respond with an extremely clutch drive, kicking the game-winning field goal with about 2 minutes left in the game. Also, major shout out to the Duke's defense, as they would come up huge as North Carolina was driving with the chance to take the lead and win the game, but the Blue Devil defense would step up with a huge pick to seal the game. Duke was now sitting at 10-2, ranked 20th in the country, and after that huge win against their rivals, they would clinch a spot in the ACC championship game against the #1 ranked Florida State Seminoles led by Jameis Winston. No cap, this game wasn't even close, but I mean, what did we expect? This 2013 Florida State football team was an all-time great team, as they would go on to win the Natty this year. So yeah, Duke would get crushed 45-7. Even though Duke would suffer a tough loss, they would still make a pretty decent bowl game, that being the Chick-fil-A Bowl against the 21st ranked Aggies led by Johnny Football. This game would be competitive, as the total points for this game would be exactly 100, and even though Duke would have 100 plus more total yards and have the ball for about 10 more minutes, they would fall just short 52-48. Let's end this section on a positive note though, as this 2013 football season for the Duke Blue Devils is still their only 10-win season to date. And when you think about this school overall, the first thing that comes to mind is their basketball program. So major shout out to this 2013 squad for shaking up the college football world and showing us that Duke is more than a basketball school. Leaving the University of Duke, we head over to Louisville to talk about the next football team in this entry. So first, let's talk about why I think Louisville is a basketball school. While I will not argue that Louisville's football program isn't as bad as Duke's or the other team I plan on covering in this video, I don't think many of you will argue with the fact that Louisville is more known for their basketball accolades rather than their football ones, as their football team has 0 natties and 8 conference championships compared to Louisville's basketball team, who has 23 conference championships with 3 national championships and 10 Final Four appearances, which if you ask me is the college basketball equivalent of the 4-team CFP playoffs. Now, like I already said, the Louisville football program overall isn't terrible, but compared to the basketball side of things, I think it's night and day, which is why I'm so excited to talk about this 2006 Louisville Cardinals football team. So let's jump right in. Coming into the 2006 football season, I think it was safe to say the expectations for this Cardinals squad was at least a Big East championship with the BCS Bowl game appearance. As in some of the Big East preseason predictions from that year that I found, I could find a couple articles that had the Cardinals finishing first in their conference. And not only was there hype from the Big East media with this team, the AP poll had Louisville coming into the year ranked 13th in the country. That was a short little intro. Now let's take a look at some of the key figures as part of this 2006 Louisville Cardinals squad. Leading the program in his third year up to that point at head coach was Bobby Petrino. And I know he was somewhat of a controversial figure within the college football world, but Louisville fans, I need you to tell me down below where you rank Coach Petrino all time for Cardinals coaches. I know he has to be behind the Louisville legend, Lee Corso. Real quick, am I the only one who had no idea that Lee Corso coached at Louisville? You learn something new every day. Anyway, running this high-power offense that would average 37.8 points per game, which was the 4th best in college football, was Brian Brom, who would throw for just over 3,000 yards with 16 touchdowns. And this is a cool little fact, but while I'm recording this video, he is currently the Louisville offensive coordinator. Launchpadding over to the running back room, the team lead in rushing was Colby Smith, who would finish the season with 862 yards with 7 touchdowns. Moving over to the receiving core, the big dog was Harry Douglas, who would have a pretty impressive season, especially for 2006 standards, as he would put up 1,265 receiving yards with 6 touchdowns. And finally, before we hop into the season, I have to shout out this beast at DB, Super Bowl champion William Gay, who would pick the pill off 6 times. Only one other quarterback in the Big East would finish with more picks than him. Okay, so to open up the 2006 college football season, 13th ranked Louisville would have 2 games to prepare for their first real test of the season, a week 3 matchup against the 17th ranked Miami Hurricanes. But before that, they would have to handle their tune-up games versus Kentucky and Temple. In their game versus their in-state rivals Kentucky, they would put ass to belt. Shout out to the depressed Cowboy fan, as they would be up 31-0 at one point in the second quarter. With that being said, it should be pretty obvious the Cardinals would end up winning the game, with the final score being 59-28. Against Temple, the Cardinals would play even more dominant, as they would win the game 62-0. Louisville was up 42-0 going into the second half and would finish the game with 671 total yards. Louisville was sitting at 2-0 and ranked at the 12th spot in the latest polls, heading into their first real test of the season, a home game versus 17th ranked Miami Hurricanes. Like I mentioned earlier in this entry, this Cardinals squad was expected to win the Big East and compete for a Natty Bird, so there was no room to play down or have a bad performance in this matchup versus the Canes.
Olsen goes over on a wing left, and here's Moss to the end zone. Touchdown Miami. Play action, Brown, deep middle, got his man on the fly at the 44-yard line. Play action, Brom, deep middle's got a man, and it's Urrutia in the open. Urrutia with a stiff arm, touchdown.
I guess, huh?
At the 4-yard line. Touchdown. At the 39-yard line. Cantwell going to swing it out to Stripling. He got a block. He got a crease. I don't think they'll get it. Down the sideline. Touchdown. The only thing that's going to sour how impressive a victory and what a major milestone victory this is going to be for Louisville today.
The Cardinals would defeat 17th ranked Miami 31-7. In a matchup that started off in the Hurricanes' favors, they would be up 7-0 going into the second quarter. But from there, Louisville would ball out, scoring 31 unanswered points. I have to give a big shout out to this Cardinals defense, as they would force the Hurricanes to commit 3 turnovers and would bend all game but never break, as Miami would enter the red zone a couple of times during this game but wouldn't be able to come away with points. The huge win would push Louisville's ranking in the latest polls to the 8th spot in the country and bring their record to 3-0. The Cardinals still had 2 more games left on their schedule before they would begin the grueling grind of Big East Conference play. Those 2 games would be on the road at Kansas State and at Middle Tennessee. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention this, but in their matchup against the Miami Hurricanes, Louisville starting quarterback Brian Brom would get injured and have to miss a couple of games before he would be ready to hop back in the starting lineup. So against Kansas State, Louisville would pull out a pretty good win, 24-6. Backup quarterback Hunter Cantwell wouldn't play amazing, but he'd play pretty good, throwing for 173 passing yards with a touchdown and interception. Overall, a decent game, as he did more than enough to contribute to the Louisville dub. The next game after on the road at Middle Tennessee, backup quarterback Hunter would ball out, tossing the pillar on for 340 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Definitely a huge step up from last game. And of course, the Cardinals won this game, as the final score would be Louisville 44, Middle Tennessee 17. 5-0, ranked 7th in the country, the Cardinals were about to start their conference schedule. And lucky for them, starting quarterback Brian Brom was back from the IR and ready to take control of his team again. To open up conference play, Louisville would see themselves match up with a 3-3 Cincinnati Bearcats. This would be close early, as Cincinnati would strike first and be leading against the Cardinals 10-3 midway through the second. The Cardinals would quickly strike after Cincinnati to retake the lead going into the second half. And from there, led by 324 passing yards from Brian Brom, Louisville would control the rest of the game, winning 23-17 against Cincinnati. The game versus the Bearcats was way too close for comfort, and their matchup against the Syracuse Orange was looking pretty similar to the Bearcats game, as going into halftime, Louisville would only be up 7-6. But I'm assuming it was just a bad start to the game, because the Cardinals would finish strong, winning the game 28-13, even though they would lose the turnover battle. The Cardinals were now sitting at 7-0 and would move up to the 5th spot in the latest polls. At this point in the season, it was safe to say that Louisville was a legit contender for the BCS title. They had looked really impressive in most of their games up to this point, and the only thing this team was missing from the resume was a huge win against another elite team. And luckily for them, their next opponent would be against the 3rd-ranked West Virginia Mountaineers, led by the dynamic duo of Pat White and Steve Slayton. While I was making this video, I usually try to include clips from College Game Day, and that's exactly what I was trying to do here, and it took me a minute to realize this game was played on a Thursday. Big East historians, or anybody really, let me know down below in the comments if this is the biggest Thursday night game in college football history. Anyway, this game would be massive for both programs, and it was really the only game on that night, so the entire college football world would be tuned in. Could the Louisville Cardinals overcome their first obstacle on the road to the BCS Natty?
They file out past the statue of Johnny Unitas. When he played here at Louisville, this wasn't even an NCAA school. The program has come a long way since then, but it's never seen a game this big. And the fans have responded to the call for a blackout. The all-black uniforms for the Louisville Cardinals. So much on the line for both of these football teams.
See Pat White step in there and make a throw to his receiver.
This time, handoff right at the middle. Steve Slayton headed for the end zone. Touchdown. Deontay Taylor, the fullback, leading the big guy, headed for the corner. Touchdown, Cardinals. Turned up the tempo. White leading to the end zone. Touchdown. On the pressure of Brom, it was incomplete on 1st down. Again, pressure. Brom steps up, delivers. Nice throw. It's caught. Douglas have it at their 12. So each team turns it over to begin this second half. Slayton slips a tackle. And now loses the football. It's scooped up. Touchdown, Louisville. Short kick, flag down, taken by Trent Guy. Trent Guy turns the corner. Guy breaks a tackle, heads for the end zone, touchdown. 2nd and 1. White, 5 yards from a 100-yard game. Will he get it here? Yes. And as the Mountaineers show pressure, then back off. Then bring the middle linebacker. It's complete over the middle once again. Jimmy Riley. Atoning for that earlier fumble down inside the 50. Field goal attempt. Brom will throw to the end zone. It is way not in the slot. White with Schmidt out front. Muscles into the end zone. Deep in the I formation, gets the handout. Step to his right, powers to the end zone. Standing Osman on this play. White fakes it and scampers into the end zone. I'll vote him 3 as well. Skeptics will say, well, they got outgained by 80 yards and survived this game on turnovers, and there is the sack they've been waiting all night for as they finally converge on White, and that'll be the final play of Louisville's biggest home game ever, and here comes the crowd from all 4 corners.
The game between West Virginia and Louisville would be an absolute banger, as both teams would total over 1,000 yards of total offense in this matchup. The first half of this matchup would be tight and go back and forth, as the Cardinals would put points on the board first, but it would be the Mountaineers who would be leading 7-3 going into the second quarter. From there, both teams would trade the lead, but going into the second half, Louisville would be up 16-14. After halftime, Louisville would take over the game, as anytime West Virginia would attempt to make a comeback, the Cardinals would quickly score again to keep the game just out of reach, eventually winning the matchup 44-34. Also, before we move on, shout out to Brian Brom. Brody was slanging that pill around like a pharmacist, passing for 354 yards with a touchdown. Louisville was now sitting at 8-0, and after that humongous win against their conference foe, they would see themselves jumping up in the latest AP polls to the 3rd spot, their highest ranking in program history up to that point. The Cardinals were on top of the college football world and enjoying all of the benefits that come along with it. However, being on top of the world can be a double-edged sword, as now Louisville would go from the challenger to the one being challenged, as literally in their last game versus West Virginia, many would call that their biggest game in program history. Now it was their turn to be on the other side of that, as their next game on the road versus the 8-0 15th ranked Scarlet Knights was going to be Rutgers' biggest home game in program history. So Louisville was now going to be getting a taste of their own medicine. Could Louisville pull off a Chief Keef finito and blow New Jersey up, or would the Cardinals be leaving the Garden State with their first loss on a cold Thursday night?
State building glows Rutgers red, a salute to the 8-0 Scarlet Knights, whose kingdom sits 40 miles to the west. It's the birthplace of college football, traced to a backyard battle with Princeton in 1869, won by Rutgers 6-4. But this campus is in a football frenzy never witnessed at Rutgers. Students snagging up 10,000 tickets in 4 hours Tuesday, racing for the biggest moment ever. Now Louisville's already tasted triumph, a signature win against West Virginia.
And after the big freshman, he powers to the end zone, touchdown. So Teal will throw on first down. Fires over the line, caught, touchdown.
To go back to their bread and butter, which is the running game. And by throwing, that sometimes can open up those running lanes.
Jawan Spillman runs it out of the end zone for Louisville, has a crease. Beats the kicker and takes it to the house. No flags. It is a few games ago. Willie Foster, it's a fake. The up snap and a first down. Breaking into the secondary, Louisville special teams at Nate Harris, the middle line. Across the middle, touchdown. For the quick comeback, but they need points in a hurry. Now it's Rice. He's around the corner. Ray Rice headed to the end zone. Touchdown. See what they've got in an important 3rd and 6. Teal has time across the middle. It's high and it's complete. 20 for daylight is Britt. The freshman in a foot race. Loses the football. It's loose. Did he get it back? Right there to Louisville. First and goal. Rice, left side. Touchdown. One more key 3rd down for Brown. Once again, pressure on him as he throws. It's caught. But not a first down. Leonard is the setback. They look in the flats and the senior's got it. And he's got room. Following Leonard.
Big job.
Whistle, snap, final play. Brock, hit and sacked. A footing ending to Rutgers' biggest win ever.
Sadly, in one of the best games to come from the 2000s, Louisville would fall just short 28-25 to the Scarlet Knights. This game would be all Cardinals to start off, as at one point Louisville would see themselves up 25-7 at one point in the second quarter. But that is as good as it would get for the Cardinals, as they would be shut down for the entire remainder of the game, as Rutgers would score 21 unanswered points to close out the game. This loss would be tough for the Cardinals, as it would drop their record to 8-1 and move their ranking in the latest polls all the way down to the 10th spot. There was 3 regular season games left on the Cardinals' schedule, and if they wanted to call their way back into contention for the BCS Natty, they would have to win out and look impressive while doing it. So who was on Louisville's schedule to end the season? Well, those teams would be USF, Pittsburgh, and Connecticut. I'm going to save us from the suspense from what happened during these games to end the season, because Louisville would finish the year strong and dominantly win easily against South Florida 31-8, Pittsburgh 48-24, and finally to end their regular season a 48-17 win against UConn. After this stretch, the Louisville Cardinals would be sitting at 11-1 with the Big East Championship under their belt. Everything was going well for Louisville except for their final ranking in the BCS rankings going into bowl season, as they would see themselves ranked at the 5th spot in the country behind LSU, Michigan, Florida, and Ohio State. If I'm being honest, there was no chance Louisville was making the Natty this year without going undefeated. But I want to end this video on a positive note, because this season would still be one of the best in program history. Even though they fell just short of the Natty, the Cardinals would still handle business in the Orange Bowl, winning 24-13 against Wake Forest, finishing the season 12-1 and putting an exclamation point on one of the best seasons in program history. Okay, so here we are. The reason I'm sure a good majority of you clicked on this video. So where do I start? First off, the final team on this entry in basketball schools that took over the college football world that we're going to be talking about today is the Indiana Hoosiers. And I just realized this, but this is back-to-back entries talking about programs that Lee Corso coached at. I might change the name of this video to teams Lee Corso coached. So I think we can all agree that Indiana is more known for their basketball success than their football ones, as their football program's all-time record sits well below 500 at 493, 692 with 38 ties. Now let's compare that to the basketball program, whose all-time record sits at 1,939 and 1,123, with 22 conference championships, 5 national championships, and 8 Final Four appearances. Although I will say, maybe things are changing in Bloomington, because in this latest year, the Indiana Hoosiers football team would do something incredible that I don't think anyone could have predicted. Oh yeah, and if you don't know by now, the team we're talking about in this entry is the 2024 Indiana Hoosiers. Alright, so coming into the 2024 college football season, the Hoosiers were coming off a 3-9 lackluster season, so it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that in a lot of Big Ten media outlet predictions, they would have Indiana finishing either last or second to last. But like most of the videos I make, when is the media ever right? I will say, maybe a reason they were so tough on this 2024 Indiana squad was because they had a new coach coming into town, and coaches changes never go well right away, right? Alright, that was a short little intro, so let's take a look at some of the dudes pushing P on this Hoosier squad. Coming over from James Madison, the former West Virginia quarterback and the most popular man in Indiana besides Larry Bird. In his first year with the Hoosiers head coach, we got Kirk Cignetti, who had this team buzzing on both sides of the ball. Their scoring offense and defense would finish ranked in the top 10 this season. And Hoosier fans, let me know in the comments, is he already the best coach in program history? Let me know down below, let's talk about it. Sliding over to quarterback, we got the Ohio Bobcat transfer, Curtis Rourke, who would pass for just over 3,000 yards with 29 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. Rotating over to the running back room, I have to mention two dudes. Justice Ellison, who would finish with 848 rushing yards with 10 touchdowns, and Tyson Lawson, who would rush for just over 668 yards with 12 touchdowns. And finally, moving over to the receiving core, the team leader was Elijah Surratt, who would put up 957 yards with 8 touchdowns. So, to open up the 2024 season, the Indiana Hoosiers would roar out the gate, dominating their first 2 games of the season, defeating the Florida International Panthers 31-7 and Western Illinois 77-3. Against the Panthers, the Hoosiers would outplay them pretty much the entire game. There really isn't much to talk about from this game because Indiana was just a far superior team, which is something I never thought I'd be saying, but this is the new college football landscape, and I love it. Back to the matchup with the Panthers though. Indiana would win pretty much every battle, outgaining them, having more first downs and having the ball for longer. In their game versus Western Illinois, Indiana would be up by nearly 40 going into halftime and playing a lot of their second and third string players by the fourth quarter. Not really much to speak of, just an overall extremely dominant win. The Hoosiers were now sitting at 2-0 going into their first Big Ten Conference game of the season, on the road at the newcomer to the conference, the 1-0 UCLA Bruins. At this point in the season, nobody was really taking Indiana serious yet. A win on the road against UCLA would definitely put some eyes on the special season brewing in Bloomington.
Rourke surveys, touchdown!
Expect to see him start off that way today.
And a fumble on the first play. Indiana's right there on for Rourke overall, but definitely on third down. He looks to convert another one here. Leave it open. Wow. Williams.
What a call.
Touchdown. Big target. Rourke looking that way. It's caught.
Wow.
This clock dwindled down as much as they can. Here is Green. Green finds the hole. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indiana.
The Hoosiers would give the Bruins a good old-fashioned welcome to the Big Ten beating, as they would easily defeat UCLA 42-13. Quarterback Curtis Rourke would surgically tear apart the Bruins defense, passing for 307 yards with 4 touchdowns. Also, major shout out to the Hoosiers defense, as they would force 2 turnovers and hold UCLA to a total of 238 yards on offense. After the huge win against the Bruins, the Hoosiers would follow that up with another blowout win, defeating the Charlotte 49ers 52-14. Once again, the offense would ball out, totaling over 510 yards with 29 first downs. 4-0 and finishing just outside the top 25 in the latest polls, the Hoosiers were about to embark on their first little stretch of the season. A 3-game stretch of Big Ten play against conference foes Maryland, Northwestern, and finally Nebraska. This stretch of play was going to be extremely tough for the Hoosiers, and the wider college football world was going to really get an idea of how serious this Indiana football team was during this stretch of conference play, especially in their matchup with the Cornhuskers. Going into that game, they would be a 5-point underdog. Could the Hoosiers shock the world and extend their record to 7-0, or would this stretch of conference play be too much for the upstart Hoosiers to handle?
Price in motion. Price, backward pass, Price to the end zone, touchdown!
The captain earlier in the week.
Going deep, he's got a man, touchdown Maryland! Going to the single coverage, end zone, touchdown! Handoff to Hemby, right through the middle, off to the races, Roman Hemby! He's gone! What a response! Lawton gets it. Lawton over the left side. Lawton! Touchdown!
Defense will likely overreact.
A delayed handoff to Allison. Cam Porter. Great block by Henning. Porter to the pylon. Indiana moving the ball nonetheless. Rourke to the end zone. Touchdown. Keyshawn. Contact again. On 3rd and short. Lausch. Pass call. Lausch, Henning, makes 2-man miss and scores his second. Rourke throws for Surratt. It's caught. 2 field goals. Rourke to the tight end. Zach Horton.
The drive coming up, and they hand it off straight ahead. Touchdown, Indiana. Beautiful job. 1st and goal at the 7. Can Indiana pay it off to the wide side? Touchdown. The ball accurately is going to come into question. 2nd down and short. They'll hand it off. Ellison cuts it back. Touchdown, Indiana. Raiola. And picked off. Up the sideline. Indiana. Asbury walking them down. Woo! America!
Indiana would look like one of the best teams in the country through this stretch, winning against Maryland 42-28. This game was pretty close at one point. It would be tied about midway through the 3rd quarter, but from there the Hoosiers would torch the Terps defense, scoring 3 touchdowns before Maryland would respond. But by then it would be too late. On the road at Northwestern, things would surprisingly be close in the 4th quarter, as a 2-yard touchdown pass from Jack Lausch would have the Wildcats only down by 3. But like in most games this season so far, whenever the Hoosiers needed to respond and put points on the board, they would, closing out the game winning 41-24. The final game to end this stretch and the only one that the Hoosiers were underdogs in would surprisingly be the easiest game for Indiana, as they would destroy the Cornhuskers 56-7. Indiana was now sitting at 7-0 and had jumped up in the rankings all the way to the 13th spot in the latest polls. The vibes in Bloomington were exceptionally high going into the Hoosiers' next game of the season versus last year's runner-ups, the Washington Huskies. Well, minus one thing I forgot to mention. Curtis Rourke, the Indiana's starting quarterback, would be injured and out this game with a thumb injury, meaning in an extremely crucial game, the Hoosiers would have to rely on backup quarterback Tavon Jackson to get the job done against the Washington Huskies. This game would be close in the 3rd quarter. The score would be Indiana 17 to Washington 14, with the Huskies getting a lot of momentum as the game would continue to go on. Could the Indiana Hoosiers hold on and survive?
In the country. Damon Williams keeping it, and he's into the end zone. Hoping for something to cheer about. Jackson cuts another one loose. A dime right to Miles Price. Back to Ellison. Ellison moving forward, he reaches. A low liner. Price sees a seam. Price across midfield. Crowd can smell it, and Price gets sprint 3 receivers out to the left. Back to the ground. No, it's the quarterback, Tavon Jackson. He kept it, and he scored it.
The Hoosiers would survive the scare against the Washington Huskies, winning 31-17, as backup quarterback Tavon Jackson would play just good enough for Indiana to survive, passing for 124 yards and a touchdown, and also responding to Washington with a clutch touchdown drive right after they scored and brought the game within 3. After the huge win with the backup quarterback in, Indiana would move to 8-0, and it seemed like the starting quarterback Curtis Rourke was healed up and ready to resume his starting quarterback role. As in their next game on the road at Michigan State, he would start and ball out, torching the Spartans' defense for 263 yards and 4 touchdowns, as the Hoosiers would easily win against Michigan State 47-10. This huge win would catapult the Indiana Hoosiers ranking in the latest polls to the 8th spot in the country, but that wouldn't come without some controversy, as a lot of the wider college football world was feeling like Indiana hadn't really faced any real competition yet. But lucky for them, they would get their chance to squabble with the big dog of their conference, the number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, very soon. But before that, they would have to handle business against the defending national champs, the Michigan Wolverines. And that's exactly what they would do, is they would defeat the Wolverines 20-15 in an impressive game that showed us that this Indiana squad could adapt to whatever it was they needed to do to win. As in their game versus Michigan, instead of scoring a lot, they proved they could win a slow, grinded out type of game in the trenches. 10-0 and ranked 5th in the latest polls, it was time to see just exactly what this 2024 Indiana Hoosier football squad was about. As it was time for one of the biggest games in program history against the Ohio State Buckeyes, hosted on College Game Day. This matchup would be huge, as there was rumblings that if the Hoosiers didn't look impressive in this game and lost, they could lose out on their chances of making the college football playoffs, even with only one loss due to their quote-unquote easy schedule. So this game would somewhat define the season for Indiana. Would the lights be too bright for a team who's never been here before, or would their naivety benefit them in one of the biggest games in school history?
I haven't had the nerve to pick against my first love in Ohio Stadium in years.
You're not going.
But not so fast for fans. Indiana upsets Ohio State.
During the alma mater?
Looking, Rourke steps into his throw over the middle, and it's called for another first down. Tyson Lawton. Spinning, touch. Howard. Hit as he throws, and it's caught. Another catch. One at the 2. And I don't know. We'll see. Howard one at the 11. Howard with time in the corner. Howard steps up on the move. Intercepted. And this one muffed. Ohio State downs up. They'll hand it off. Henderson, touchdown Buckeyes. Evans. Downs lets it take a bounce, picks it up at the 21, spins out of traffic, up the sideline with room. Here he gallops, cuts it back, Downs, the Alabama transfer, here at Ohio State, touchdown!
Next week to get back in line.
First down and goal at the 2-yard line, touchdown Indiana. Tyson Lawton gets in with 1:53 to go. Empty backfield for Rourke. In the corner, and he gets it. It's Omar Cooper.
Sadly, in one of the biggest games in program history, Indiana would fall to the Buckeyes 38-15. I have a confession to make, so whenever me and my pops are watching big games, I like to call him every now and then during the match to chat and swap thoughts about what's going on. And during this matchup, I swear I called him twice in the first half saying, "Yo, Pops, I think we're watching history in the making right here. I think the Hoosiers might do it." Obviously, that's not how things would turn out at all, as the Buckeyes would come out and completely dominate the second half, handing the Hoosiers their first loss of the season. Indiana was now sitting at 10-1, and the tough loss would drop their ranking in the latest polls to the 10th spot. The Hoosiers were now sitting in a very scary spot because since their loss to the Buckeyes didn't really impress many people, their chances of making the college football playoffs would all depend on how much the committee believed the Hoosiers deserved to make it, which is not a spot you want to be in. But all the Hoosiers could do was win their last game of the season against the Purdue Boilermakers and hope things went in their favor. Against Purdue, Indiana would dominate the Boilermakers, winning 66-0. This game was just a straight blowout, so there's not really much to speak of about this game besides the fact that the Indiana defense held Purdue to only 67 total yards. The college football regular season was over and Indiana had finished the regular season 11-1 and would be rewarded for their excellent play this season with the playoff spot, more specifically the 10th spot, and in their first game of the playoffs, they wouldn't have to travel far at all as they would be facing off against the 7th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the first matchup of the 2024 college football playoffs. The Hoosiers season had already been a success as no one expected them to make it this far. At this point in the season, the Hoosiers didn't want a pat on their back, they wanted to win it all.
As this one gets underway, but it is chilly. We had snow range. Rourke, single coverage, lots of grabbing, and wow, what a catch. They go quickly from the 17-yard line. That one's intercepted. So each team has thrown a pick. Riley Leonard and the Irish from their own 2. Jeremiah Love breaks free. Jeremiah Love trying to go 98. Touchdown! What a run!
Here, though, big part of the passing game.
The fake, and it is a touchdown. On 2nd and 10, the play action pass on the money to Miles Price. On a cold and snowy night in Bloomington 3 weeks ago. Right down the middle from 34 in Indiana. 1991. Leonard, great feel for the rush, stepped up, fires! Phase on! Goal, Notre Dame up 20-3 with under 5 minutes to go. Riley Leonard has the record. He wants resumes of guys who've played a lot and played well. Swing pass, Price, bang down at who Googled Kurt Signetti. Back shoulder throw, that finally works, and it's a touchdown. Perhaps we're burying.
The game versus Notre Dame wouldn't go in the Hoosiers' favor as they would lose 27-17. And if you watch the game, you know the score wasn't really that close as a lot of the Indiana points were scored late in garbage time. While the loss was tough, I want to end this video on a positive note. So the Indiana Hoosiers would finish the 2024 regular season 11-2. Those 11 wins would be the most in a single season in school history, as well as the Hoosiers head coach Kirk Signetti being awarded with the College Football Coach of the Year award. Overall, a historic season for the Hoosiers and one that hopefully this program can build upon to hopefully one day become a consistent football program. But that's just about going to do it for this video. Be sure to comment any teams or video ideas that you want me to cover. I'm out.